I know, she was just so mesmerizing. I'll let it go. I'll let this one slide. So does anyone in real life have a question? Yes.
So as you were
Could you stand, please? Thanks.
as you were going about your career, and obviously obstacles were presented before you, some more challenging than others. What did you do to gather the strength to be able to go past those obstacles and come out the other side even better?
Okay, I'm going to reiterate for our video purposes. So throughout your career, all these obstacles that you went through, what did you do to get beyond those obstacles?
Okay, here's, I think one of the most important things is to have a tribe of friends that you can go drinking with. And you can complain and bitch and moan, and then your friends will check you if you've been complaining about the same thing for too long. And I mean, that's really it. I mean, as I said, I have some dear, dear friends that I've met along the way. And over the course of each job, it's more like gathering. So from my earliest jobs, I mean, one of my friends was here, you know, for Light City from my job in 1978. So, you know, having your tribe is the most important thing.
Sarah.
Okay, so I was really feeling you when you said you use anger to become better than. Can you please describe that process for those of us who are quick-tongued? Because you said you were you have cynicism, and I kind of admire that, but I feel like cynicism works when you know how to challenge it. And when you said that you were angry, or not you were angry per se.
No, I was angry.
I was like, that really touched me. So like, can you describe your process, like your thinking process in order to channel that anger into something productive?
Okay, I'm gonna reiterate again. Video purposes. So you talked about anger and being better than with that. How do you use anger, cynicism, I guess, to your advantage, and use it to channel more productivity?
There's a couple of things. One is understanding the pedagogy of the oppressor. Paulo Freire.
Yes.
And so putting into words that can be understood that are nice, nasty. So
I know what you mean.
that and really understanding what's at stake. Sometimes you can't leave because you need that paycheck. But it's important to be clear about potential problems. Okay, when I was at 2020, I was an associate producer, but I was asked to train new incoming producers, and I never got producer on-air credit. You know, and it's like, what's up with that? And, you know, for a while you do it because you're being given an opportunity. But at some point you say, okay, I can't do this anymore. And I went to the executive producer and said, I cannot do this. You ask me to train these people who don't know the front end of a camera from the back. You need to promote me. So then they let me produce stories without the credit. Fortunately, I was contacted about an executive producer position at a new cable channel, and everybody thought I was weird that I would leave a broadcast network to go to cable, because at the time cable was just like, really? But I was able to executive produce a show for teenagers on Nickelodeon at the startup of Nickelodeon. And we won awards, including 1/4 of a Peabody, because they submitted 4 shows and the Peabody Foundation gave them an award for the channel. And we had fun. So, you know, you just have to just figure out how do you frame it so that you don't get fired. But I think it's always good to leave on your own terms.
I like that.
You've obviously had hundreds of successes. What's your favorite?
So what's your favorite success of all your successes?
You know what? I think one of the best times I had was doing that show for Nickelodeon. We shot 6 one-hour shows a week. We were actually shooting in the Ed Sullivan Theater. This was pre-Letterman. I had a really terrific staff that I was able to give not complete creative control, but I always feel that it's the executive producer's role to say, okay, animal, vegetable, mineral, we're building an animal, and it needs to have 4 legs. One of the best pieces of advice I was ever given when after I was like, after I was so adamant about what was or wasn't going to happen at 2020, and got the job at Nickelodeon, I insisted on an exit interview with the executive, with the executive producer, but he gave me one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten. He said, Alyce, hire somebody to choose the curtains. You don't need to choose the curtains. And he was absolutely right. And creating an atmosphere where everyone felt that they can contribute to the show. And we would do 2 shows on Friday. After the show on Friday, I would buy 2 cases of beer and 4 bottles of wine, because nobody drank wine back then. And we would put music on the studio's sound system, and we would have a party for, an hour. And then we would go drinking, because back then everybody drank. And then we'd go to the clubs, and we had a ball. And we had everybody from Melly Mel and Scorpio to REM. We had Billy Joel. We had, comedians. We had a woman who designs thermonuclear weapons. It was a talk variety show for teenagers, and it actually predated MTV in its inception. And then as MTV came along, our studio audience age was lowered. But we had a ball. And I think that that's what I'm most proud of, that I had the most fun doing. And a good amount of the staff on that show are still my friends. They're still my friends.
You talked about the importance of being unique and finding your own unique niche as you're pitching yourself or your work. For the artists or the folks and organizations in this room who may have trouble figuring out what that unique element is about themselves, what advice do you have for figuring out what it is that makes you you and makes you look singular?
So, what are some tips on figuring out what makes one person unique and what makes their work singular?
I think that it starts with figuring out what you don't like. It's really a process of elimination. And, you could sort of get into a trick bag with what other people like about what you do. Like, I was a really good producer, but I hated producing. I hated it. And I mean, the irony is, like, right this minute in time, I'm, working with Wide Angle, and because of a number of reasons, I have to, set up the shoots, and I'm like, oh, I hate this. But I'm good at it, but I hate it. So the first step is figuring out what you don't like and narrowing it down until you feel that personal satisfaction. And that's what makes you unique. This is what I do that I love.
You had a question?
Hi, thank you so much. This has been awesome. I love avoiding the bullshit.
Everyone was gasping me like, yes.
Right? And I'd love to learn more. Is this something that you just feel here and you just kind of, analyzing the landscape? Has it gotten easier with age?
Well, yes. You know what? Because you are,
For video purposes. Avoiding bullshit. Is it something from within? Does it get better with age? How do you channel all of that?
it gets easier when you begin to recognize patterns. And you know when something, you get a sense, I shouldn't say you know, but you get a sense when something is or is not real. To be honest with you, it's getting harder and harder to determine what's real. I think it was Alvin Toffler in The Third Wave said that the problem with virtual reality is not, the pretty pictures. The problem is that we will not know what is real. So it's as you move down your career path, you have experience that it's like, I remember being here before, and I know this is not going to turn out well. Again, depending on the bills you need to pay, depending on if you have not married well, you need to be honest with yourself and say, okay, I am at the 7th level of hell. And you need to pour yourself a glass of wine and call that best friend and bitch and moan and bitch and moan and bitch and moan, and then get up the next day and just keep going. Because sometimes bullshit cannot be avoided, but it can always be recognized.
That's right.
What do you do now with your history
Wait,
with
can I?
NEA?
I'm sorry. Can you stop? We're going on a. This is a very structured thing.
I'm sorry.
You're gonna have to raise your hand. We got video purposes happening. Okay. I'm serious about this stuff. I know. I'm sorry. I went through the setup. Okay. You may ask your question, and I will repeat it for video purposes.
I'll try and keep it.
Thank you.
Given your history with the NEA and your charge to avoid bullshit, in your hoping to find hope, what's your plan for right now? Because it's so bad. What are you gonna give some tips? Like how do we deal? What can we do as individuals to combat this alternative reality, to make a difference for good?
So in this climate that we're in right now, how can we make a difference? What tips do you have for us to fight, pretty much?
I guess, it's really based on who you are and what you know how to do. There are people out here who need things. And you have within your uniqueness something to not give them, but help them along their path. I don't believe any of us have the ability to empower anyone else. The best we can do is empower ourselves. And the question is, what do I know that would be of use to someone else? And that can mean making a piece of art, whatever that is, whether it's music or whether it's sculpture or because we need that art activity in order to keep us human, because our humanity is at stake right now. It's not about the NEA or the Ford Foundation or any other money thing. And one of the things that is interesting to me about the fact that we moved from proprietary arts into government and private philanthropy is that the chase for the money, I feel, has eroded the work. And so many people try to fit their work to meet what the foundation or the NEA is looking for. I had a big argument with the woman who's in charge of media arts at MacArthur now because they gave money, a big amount of money to POV and Independent Lens and blah, blah, blah. But that means that all of those independent documentary films will fit within the confines of public television, which if you look at documentaries, and there are a number that are at this month's or next month's Maryland Film Festival, if you look at the work that's being created in other countries, we can't hold a candle in terms of creativity. So the question is, how do you take what you do well and ignore the structures and strictures that are placed around us and put something in the world that ain't been there before? I mean, fundamentally, that's the first and best thing you can possibly do. You know, yeah, you can go work at a soup kitchen, you could give, you know, $1 to the guy who wants to squeeze your window, blah, 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 blah. But, you know, on the other side of that, the very practical is what everybody has been saying since the election. You can register to vote and you can run for office. I mean, we still live in a democracy, allegedly, and that's how it's supposed to work. But we also know that there are forces that are, you know, that tell lies and make people believe things that aren't true. But yeah, practical, you can run for office, vote, go to town hall meetings, you know, and all the democratic civil society pieces. But, you know, aside from that, it's important for you to make use of your creativity, whatever that means.
Great. One more question.
You were talking about the role of the executive producer being to say, this is an animal with 4 legs, so broad strokes. And one thing that I face a lot creatively is the blank page. How do you start with that blank page? How do you organize thoughts so that you put the first few paragraphs there that were never there before, that's an idea coming straight out of your head?
So how do you formulate that idea onto this blank page? How do you actually build all of this stuff out of thin air, pretty much?
Okay, first and foremost, everyone's entitled to a first draft. So it doesn't have to be perfect when you put it on the page. I mean, this little, you know, thing that I talked, you know, read today, you know, started out as a bunch of ideas. And they didn't make sense, and they didn't flow. And, you know, it was only, you know, after days and days that I said, oh, I guess what I'm talking about are these phrases that have helped me grow. So it's not being afraid to put that first thought. It doesn't have to be the answer, but the first thought on the page, because you're writing something because something is compelling you to say something. So the question is, what is compelling you to say something? And how do you answer it? And it's really a dialogue that runs in your head and runs from your head onto the paper. One of the things that I think that is so magical about art in general, but for me, television, was that something in my head could eventually be on a screen that I could share with the entire world. And so, but don't be afraid of that first draft. Everyone, absolutely everyone, is entitled to a first draft, and it could suck. It could be totally terrible, but at least it tells you what shouldn't be there.
Great. Another round of applause for